everybody. Good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. It's beautiful autumn weather. So this evening it gives me great delight to introduce Delphine Chabanne, not Delphine Dolphin, and her talk tonight. Just a little bit of background information on Delphine. Delphine first arrived in Australia in 2007, volunteering to assist PhD researchers studying the population of dolphins in Bunbury. Originally intended to stay for 3 months, her journey is now extended to 17 years and counting. Delphine's background lies in population ecology with a strong foundation in understanding and applying behaviour and population genetics. In 2011, she began extensive research on dolphin populations in Perth's metropolitan waters, culminating in the completion of her PhD, which involved a comprehensive reassessment of the region's population of dolphins, including those in the Swan Canning River Park. Since then, Delphine has been actively monitoring dolphins in the Swan Canning estuary and has contributed to various research endeavours along the West Australian coastline and interstates. In recent years, she has returned to Coburn Sound to conduct monitoring and data collection on the resident dolphin community in association with the proposed development of an outer harbour in Kwinana. Delphine's talk will provide insights into the population of dolphins inhabiting the Perth region, detailing the research methodology, and sharing current knowledge about it, along with an overview of the threats the population faces and actionable steps for their conservation. Please welcome Delphine. Thank you.
For the introductions. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see the room quite full. So, before I start, I would like to make an acknowledgement of the country and acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Murdoch nations and traditional custodians of the land and water in which the research took place, and that's included the Narra, which is Common Sounds. And I also pay my respect to Mandarin and dynamic culture, leadership of the elder past, present, and emerging. So, which species of dolphins do we have here in Perth metropolitan water? Well, we call them the Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins. Underneath you see that's the scientific name of it. Just briefly, I'm just going to mention that we do actually have 2 species of bottlenose dolphins along Australia. The coastline one is the Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins. If you are actually venturing further offshore, you find other bottlenose dolphins. We call them the common bottlenose dolphins. But tonight I'm just going to talk about the Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins, which are the ones you can see in the coastline area, so from the shore. The Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins are actually protected under the Environment Protections and Biodiversity Act and also the Biodiversity Conservation Act, specifically in Western Australia. In 2019, so quite recent in some way, they have actually been listed as globally near threatened under the IUCN Red List, which is at least international treatment for species. So, a little bit of background to start with. In Perth, we had quite a fair bit of research done on bottlenose dolphins. I'm going to say bottlenose dolphins or just dolphins for the rest of the presentation. So here you can see the map with, so you will recognize the Swan Canning estuary, and then we have Fremantle, we have Coburn Sands, and the sections between Woodman Point and Fremantle call it Owen and Quaich, and anything that is above Fremantle, I will mention it as Gage Road. So you can see here I've just put out the dates where research actually happened, and you can see that in Coburn Sand, first research on dolphins actually occurred in 1993-97, and then every decade we basically had new research happening in Coburn Sand. In the Swan Canning estuary, the first time we had some research done, it was in 2001, 2003, and then back more recently, 2011, 2015, and ongoing recently. The other areas have been more limited. Gage Road, which is north of Fremantle, has been part of my PhD in terms of looking at the dolphins overhaul in the Perth metropolitan water, but you can see that we haven't actually done as much research in this area. One of the reasons for it, and I will mention it later, is the dolphins there are not necessarily resident. They will basically be traveling between resident community, which are Owen and Quage, Coven Sands, or further north, is also where you see a much more enclosed environment. This area is generally what we call open water, so it is straight to the offshore with limited barrier. So in terms of the background research, if I come back to some of the research done in 1993, 97, and 2001, 2003, those research were actually very focused on human interactions and specifically on illegal provisioning. Here I show you two videos. The first one was of two different individuals. We call them Fingers and Backpack. And this is the kind of behavior we had when they were still alive. They were just coming into the boat, beg for food. And unfortunately, back then, fishermen would be actually feeding the dolphins with fish. The issue with this behavior back then comes with multiple risks for the dolphins itself. As the dolphin approached the boat, it would have a risk of getting boat struck with the engine still being on, or they would be fishing, so there would be a line somewhere, and there is a risk of the dolphins being caught. And that second video is of Fingers, and you can see on the fluke he actually had a fishing line entanglement. Fingers died not long after having that fishing line, most likely from the injury from it, but also infections from it. Backpack, both of these individuals, I must say, were around 40 years old, which is generally a quite good age for male dolphins to live to. In estuary, and I apologize if that photo is a little bit shocking for everyone, I can switch if you need. So the background of in estuary is mainly based on an event that happened in 2009. We call that event an unusual mortality event. We generally describe unusual mortality events when you have more than one dolphin per year dying. In that year, we lost 6 dolphins in 2 periods of 2 weeks in the Swan Canyon estuary. And that was also the first time that we actually detected what we call the cetacean morbidity virus. This is a virus, bacteria virus, that basically affects the immune system of the dolphin. So that dolphins, you can see here, have the immune system shut down. And generally, as a visual that we could see, it's through skin infections, like you can see here. So based on what's happened specifically in 2009, the government actually put some money there because we wanted to actually better understand what happened, what was the cause behind the death of these animals. Back then we didn't know yet that was the cetacean morbidity virus. And we also wanted to know what's the consequence for the dolphins living in the Swan Canyon estuary. And of course, the Swan Canyon estuary is small and it's open to the ocean, so we needed to be a little bit more broad and understand what's happening in the whole context of the Perth metropolitan water area. So in 2011-2015, I did my PhD, and my PhD was basically to reassess the dolphin populations in the Perth metropolitan water, and that included the Swan Canyon estuary. And below are a few more research that happens after. So from 2015 and still ongoing, so have been monitoring the dolphins community in the Swan Canyon estuary. And this is part of collaborations with the dolphin, sorry, not the dolphin. It's a collaboration with the Dolphin Watch program, which is monitored by the Department of Biodiversity Conservation and Attraction. The Dolphin Watch program is a citizen science program in which everyone can participate. It's free, and I will mention that a little bit more. But also, what we provide is something like this one. It's a fin book, which basically provide information about all the resident dolphins living in the Swan Canyon estuary, and include what we call a catalogue even yourself, you can actually try to identify the dolphins you see.
Jump and hand them around.
You can, but I don't have that many, so just come to me at the end if you want to have one. I'll have a few copies for you. And then, so the most recently research have been involved with is part of the Wannsee Westport Marine Science Program. So some of you may be aware that there is a potential development for a outer harbour in the Queen Anna Shell area. So potentially actually overlapping with dolphin population there. And so I've been looking at identifying the key habitats used and the diet of the dolphins in that area. So for tonight, I really, because you don't actually know as much maybe around the dolphins in Perth metropolitan water, so I'm really going to focus on the study and I guess results from my PhD in 2011 and 2015, but more results from the other more recent research that comes along the way. So what were my aim back then? Well, we wanted to know whether or not there was a communist structure among the dolphins living in a swamp in Perth metropolitan water. How we did this was basically looking at the social behaviors between dolphins, but also how they use the environment as the spatial area, but also looking at the genetic, whether or not they were connected or some similarity with the genetic between individuals we found in Swan Canyon Estuary and the one in Carbon Sound. We wanted to know how many dolphins we still have after the death of through the cetacean mortality virus. We know it did affect the Swan Canyon Estuary with 6 dolphins dying in 2009. We, however, didn't know how it affects other communities, such as the one in Carbon Sound. We wanted to know whether or not there is movement. What's the type of interactions between the dolphins generally seen in the Swan Canyon Estuary and Carbon Sound or in Anchorage? And then lately, we've been able to report the human interactions and injuries that we've been seeing generally on dolphins. So to start with, I'm going to give a little bit of the background in terms of how we actually study dolphins and how we are able to answer all those questions. So one way I have been doing my research, but there's multiple ways, but one way I've been doing my research is through conducting boat-based survey. So here on the map, you can see the lines passing all the area. These are the transects that I've actually been doing for 4 years, between 2011 and 2015, basically following the same ones. The idea behind it is to make sure that we cover exactly the same area over time, so that we get a better understanding of where dolphins are in that particular area, without actually putting too much effort in one area and less effort in another one, and then concluding that they use more of this area than other. Well, in fact, I did not survey in the same way. And the one just in the middle, these are the surveys that were conducted in Queen Anna Shell specifically between 2022 and 2023. During the survey, so I'll show on the little map there, which will be called the estuary. Oh, it didn't work that well, but that's okay. So basically, the white line is the survey that we do when we monitor the dolphins in the Swan Canyon Estuary. So we on the boat, I generally have actually volunteers with me, and we basically follow that transect line. On the transect line, we're going to find dolphins. What we do, and I should mention that to do all this research, we are actually under a permit and animal ethic for it. So we are allowed to approach the dolphins to a certain distance, in which we actually take photos of their dorsal fins. Why are we taking photos of their dorsal fins? This is because it's the feature of the animal that we use to identify them, and I'll come back to that after. So when we see a group of dolphins, we go closer, we take photos of each individual, and then we write down on the data sheet some information such as the behavior. We take some environmental conditions such as the water temperature, the depth, salinity, anything that we can actually take from where we are. And we also do genetic sampling, not all the time, but I'll show you how we do that too. So for the photo identifications, what is it exactly? So as I just said, we use dorsal fins for identifying dolphins individually. The dorsal fin is actually unique to each dolphin. They will always be born with a clean fin, and as they grow and through life, they will accumulate scars next to that you can see as an example on those ones. Those scars next can be through socializing between individuals at the time, but they can also come from bigger traumas, such as bow strikes or fishing line entanglements, but as well predation with shark, which is an example with the first one. So this one was actually bitten by a bull shark. And then the others, you can see on the leading edge, which is the front of the dorsal fin, it does have a cut, which is most likely through a fishing line entanglement. In terms of behavior, we generally have 4 states that we recognize. The first one is foraging. So this is when you see dolphins actually trying to chase fish. Here we have one dolphin who we call Acuna. She's a resident dolphin on the Swan Canyon estuary, and she's currently foraging in very shallow water. How do we know that she's foraging? Because you not necessarily see the fish there. Well, you can see her head is actually moving quite a lot. Currently, she's using what we call echolocations. So she's emitting clicking sound and listening to the echo. So as she emits the click against the wall, for example, this is going to come back to her, and her brain is going to analyze this and basically provide information as what is it? Is it somewhere where I have to go? If it's a fish, what size is the fish? How far the fish is? Do I keep going this way? If it's something much bigger, like a shark, it might be the response of actually going opposite direction. Another way of foraging, you can see here, again in the shallow water, that you may see sometimes a trail behind it. This is simply because it's in the shallow water and they can't actually move further up, but they do use very fast swim to catch the fish. We do have a couple of examples of dolphins catching very often in the estuary will be purse herring or mullet. Another one is a little bit more a soup, I guess, I should say. And you can see all the dolphins are basically trying to snack on little fish in this area. Very often around autumn or winter time, you will actually see the dolphins feeding in the same area where birds are aggregated to. Another type of behavior that we record is resting. When dolphins rest, you might actually see them just snagging, that's how we call it, they snag at the surface. The reason why they snag at the surface is, unfortunately for dolphins, they have to physically come back to the surface to breathe. So they can't actually sleep while underwater, otherwise they will actually drown. When they sleep, they only sleep off half a brain. So their brain is meticulous in how it works. It's much bigger than the human brain itself. But when they sleep, they actually sleep off half brain at very small period of time. We're talking seconds or maximum minutes at each time. But the reason for them to sleep off half brain, one, is making sure that they come back at the surface to breathe. And second, they always have one eye open, which is opposite to the brain sleeping. Opposite to the brain still active. It works in diagonals. And that is to make sure that they can actually still scan the environment. In case of danger, they just wake up straight away and go. Then we have the most basic one, traveling. They will just be in the same traveling will be going same directions all the time, slow, regular surfacing every 2 minutes, basically. And then the last one, socializing, that's where you can see a little bit more splash. Dolphins are actually quite close to each other. Some of the socializing behavior can be quite brutal. Here we have an example of 3 males. I don't know if you can probably see, but 1 in the middle and 2 on the sides, which are actually just That was unheard. And they do this between males simply because they do compete for females too. So they do actually fight. All right. And then genetic. How do we collect genetic on dolphins? So everything is done remotely. We don't catch the dolphins as such. One way we've been doing it, there's two methods generally for doing this, but the way we've been doing in my team is using a modified rifle. That can sound a little bit wow. But so this rifle basically, we are able to put an arrow, which you can see the red bit. Now what goes into the dolphins, and you can see the photos at the bottom here where we generate targets. It's only the tip of the arrow going into the skin blubber. So the dolphins, you see all the dark colors is the skin, and underneath the skin you have a layer that's called the blubber. That layer is basically fat. So we're not actually reaching any organs or muscles or anything like that. And they generally have really like tiny piece of it taken. Our actual darts are 4 millimeters diameters to 7 millimeters depth. So it's really tiny what we're getting from there, leaving just a tiny holes in 2 weeks, not even, it's already scarred. And generally dolphins actually don't even react to it. What we get, however, from that tiny piece of samples, this is what it looks like when we have it. So you can see the white is the blubber, the dark it's the skin. From the blubber itself, we can actually get the DNA itself. From the DNA, we get... Sorry, I didn't hear that.
If you shoot the dart into them, how do you get the dart back?
Good question. The dart itself is actually hollow inside, so it's empty, so it will actually float at the surface. So when the dart actually touches the dolphins, it goes to the skin blubber and it just pops straight away. And the dart is made to float, so we just go closer and then skip the dart back. That was a good question. So from the blubber we get the sex. We can also look at parentage between individuals, relateness, so is there any genetic related between individuals, and we look as well as the community structure in a much bigger scale. From the skin itself, we can actually try to provide some information about the diet of dolphins by looking at what we call stable isotope signature, so it's mainly the level of carbon and nitrogen that they will have, and that provides information about the level of trophic that they will eat. I won't go into details for that. So, some answer to this. Well, through at least the 4 years research data collections done in 2011, 2015, and still on now, we know that the dolphins in Perth metropolitan waters are long-term residents. And here I show you photos of a couple of examples. One of them is from Hamelin, she's a female resident in Provincetown, and then the other one is Bottom Slides, he's a male resident in Swanton History. And you can see the photos we're taking at different time. I don't have all the photos there, I didn't have enough space in that spreadsheet, but you can see from 1994 to 2002 how Hamelin's salinity was, actually I should say from 1994 to 2014, Hamelin dolphins was pretty much the same, and then in 2022 it did change, but you can really see the shape is still there as well. And then bottom slides really, in 20 years time, it's really minimum change in the dorsal fin, just a little bit more smooth in terms of the low nick that it had in 2023, but otherwise, yeah. So this is how we actually can, using that photo identifications, we can really do like a full history of each individual. And the more regular surveys we do, the more times we are able to photograph the individuals, the better we are at actually keeping track of each individual, even so their dorsal fins might change a little bit. So through the photo ID, because we can identify each dolphins, we know with which other dolphins they spend most of the time. And looking at all this data, we create what we call a network. That's what the network is. So all dot square that you see are actually one individual, and the line in between is actually indicating that they are associated. They've been interacting together. And here we could clearly see that we actually have 4 different groups as such. And in fact, with a little bit more information, those 3 groups in particular are representative of the dolphins using the Swan Canyon estuary, and then we have the dolphins using Owen Anchorage, and we have the dolphins using Common Sounds. So that's really told us that dolphins using those different areas really actually they used to associate with dolphins using the same area itself. And back then, we were able to actually tell that in Common Sounds we have about 65 resident dolphins, and I'm just talking adults and juveniles here. We have around 45 individuals for Owen Anchorage, and Swan Canyon estuary was around 16 adult and juvenile back then. Now if I just show quickly, this is Gage Road. Yes?
Yeah, there are a couple of dolphins that come into this marina.
So the one you see in the marinas are generally the one from the Swan Canyon estuary.
Do you know the names or?
Yes, so a mom and calf that you will see more regularly, and you might be able to also identify her because she does have quite a distinctive fin now. Her name is Hope, and her calf is Bubbles. But there are also juveniles from the estuary that have been using the marina quite a lot. Those ones will be, wow, a blank suddenly. One of them is Cruz, and the other ones is Zafar. There are other as well, but those ones will be the ones that I've also seen myself quite a lot. Sometimes I don't even need to be on the boat, they're just here. So. Alright, so just very briefly to show you, because I've been monitoring the dolphins in the Swan Canyon estuary pretty much non-stop since 2011, so we've been able to look at the trend of the numbers of individuals. Here we do include the calves, which is why the number is a bit higher, but you can see that generally it's quite stable. The number is very low, as you can see. We've never actually reached more than 31 individuals. That was in 2015. But
Why is that?
That's a good question. We think that there is what we call a carrying capacity in a Swan Canyon estuary. So it really depends on the amount of resource that is available for each individual. So if the resource is limited, there's no point of having more individuals. Now, this is still an hypothesis. It's something that is really difficult to actually monitor, but also to put on paper as such. But it is a possibility. I should mention that, so remember in 2009 we had the first event of cetacean morbillivirus. It did happen again in 2019, and this time we lost 5 dolphins in the Swan Canyon River Park, which is why you have that little drop after 2019. And now it has increased. The last 2 calf borns were a year ago in April, so I'm hoping that we have a new calf soon. We do have a couple of females who could actually be pregnant. Another fact is, so they are actually, so even so they form this community, like we showed in the network, you would have seen that some individuals were still connected with the individuals from different communities. And we can actually reflect that a bit better through how they actually use the Perth metropolitan water. So if we look at the red, the green and the yellow, this is actually for the Swan Canyon, the estuary for the red, Owen Anchorage the green, and Common Sounds for the yellow. The first one is showing you the core area. The core area really is where about you are going to see the dolphin the most. And in fact, in this case, it's basically the representation of 50% of the group that I observed while I was doing the survey. And you can see that for Common Sounds, it's mainly covering Queen Anna Shell. Owen Anchorage, it's pretty much everywhere. It's really centric. And in Swan Canyon estuary, there is a hot spot in Fremantle Harbour, and generally the lower beach. Now, if you look at the extended, what we call the home range of the individuals, you can see that there's actually quite a bit of overlap, which really tells us that they do still interact between communities, different communities. And some other way of showing that the community is also connected is through the genetic. So once I've got that little samples from multiple dolphins from different community, I could actually show that they were genetically connected. So with no isolations of the Swan Canyon estuary dolphins to the other. There's multiple ways of being genetically connected, two of them in particular. One of them is obviously through reproductions between community. And here I'm actually going to provide information specifically on what's happening with the males itself. The males do form what we call alliance. So you will find 2 males or 3 males always hanging out together. And generally they will actually try to herd female. We have examples where a pair alliance from the Swan Canyon estuary will be going in Cobbon Sound and come back in the estuary with a female from Cobbon Sound. So that happened quite a few times and is still happening. We've seen the males from the estuary a lot more in Cobbon Sound and always trying to actually bring a females from Cobbon Sound in the estuary. So this is one way of sharing the genetic. Another way is a movement. So the difference between the two is that the movements mean that an individual was actually born in one community and over the time of his life is going to make the decision of moving to the other community, moving to the other space and interacting more with the other dolphins. And we do have that examples with herd. So herd, that dolphins that you will see quite often in the marina. She is actually a dolphin born from a female resident in Owen Anchorage that she's been actually using or spending more time in the inner harbour and lower reach of the estuary and the marina itself. And then, so this is actually part of the latest work I've done for the One Sea Westport marine program. And here I'll really show you very briefly. So if you look at the darker color, this is where the dolphins actually have a higher probability to be found. And generally for Owen Anchorage, it will be close to the shore. And their distributions is generally related to seasonal variations in response to sea temperature and water visibility. So very much related to prey distributions itself. And in Cobbon Sound, you can see that these dark colors again are very much overlapping with the Queen Anna Shell area, as well as very narrowly around the coastline in the south. And while the model itself don't actually show that the habitat, so whether it's sand, seagrass or reef, was not an important variable to explain that particular distributions, we can really see that all of these dark colors overlap with each of these different substrates that we have, really proving the importance of each of them for the dolphins. So this is also a report that is actually available on the 1C website if you want to have a read of it. Another fact that I'm going to provide is that, and this is specifically to the Swan Canyon estuary, so we know since 2011 we had 39 calves born. Out of the 39, 16 actually dies before weaning. Dolphins will, a calf will stay with a mom for about 2 to 3 years and then become independent. The weaning age, that's when they become independent. And unfortunately, so 41% have died before that age. And before maturity, so dolphins become mature when they're around 10 years of age, we also lost 9 of them. So quite subsequent high mortality of calf in the estuary. And so what are the cause of the different threats that the dolphins are actually dealing with? Well, one of the main ones that we have, and again more specifically to the Swan Canyon estuary, but we have the same in Cobbon Sound, it's fishing gear entanglement. The numbers are specific to the estuary, but so over this 11 period of times we have 4 individuals in the Swan Canyon River Park, who died from the severity of the injuries itself. And we have 4 other, and that's a minimum, that really show old injury that would be from entanglements. Here are some examples of the damage that fisherline entanglement will do. The one closest to me, this is from an individual called Gizmo. You may have heard maybe in 2012, we had the water police actually caught dolphins to remove a fishing line. So this was for Gizmo. So we did manage to remove the fishing line back in 2012. Gizmo was still calf back then. Unfortunately, we lost Gizmo in 2015. There is a possibility, and we're still doing some research, that the cause of death of Gizmo were somehow related to that entanglement back then, to this bacteria coming back, basically. And then we have other examples where the fish line will be all around the body on cows or the moms. So if you have a mother dying from fish line entanglement, unfortunately, very often what will happen is that if she does have a dependent calf, the calf will also die, given that it doesn't actually have anyone to nurse it anymore. Other cause, so we mentioned it, the cetacean morbillivirus. So far we have 2 years with cases in 2009 and 2019, with 6 cases in 2009 and 5 cases in 2019. And then we have predations, obviously, which is part of the natural system in this case, with shark. Surprisingly, dolphins recover very well from sometimes big shark bite. It really depends whereabouts the shark bite occur. If it does occur on the dorsal area of the dolphins, they will generally recover well, simply because the dorsal part is muscle. If they do get bite on the belly, that's a little more risky, given that it's close to the internal organ. So, a bit of a conservation, and that's how I'm actually going to conclude my talk tonight. Just a quick summary. The dolphins in Perth, they are in 2 communities, but those communities are actually really small. Like you've seen, the biggest one we have is in Cobble Sand, it's 68 dolphins only. We do see that in Swan Canyon River in particular, we have a high calf mortality. And so all of that really show that between the size of the populations and the numbers of cases that we have of fish and line entanglements, we really see that there is a very high vulnerability of the dolphins due to human impact. So what can we do about that as a group altogether, community? Well, we can keep the oceans, estuary, coastline clean and tidy. We can dispose of fish and line truthfully. So we do have a lot of what we call real ending along the Swan Canyon estuary, but I think there is also quite a few along the coastline down to Rockingham, Mandurah. So you can put line and hook in there. If we do see dolphins around, we try to slow down. There is actually rules on how to actually behave around dolphins if we see them, whether you are on the boat, on the kayak, or swimming. We don't feed dolphins. Even so, you may think that they're actually eating the same fish. You never know the fish that you are actually providing, but also it's a higher risk for the dolphins given that they're coming closer to boats, fishing lines, and all that. And you can get involved by helping us collecting data around. So this is where the Dolphin Watch Citizen Science program managed by the department is actually quite good for. They're the first eyes on the water. I'm not all the time on my boat, unfortunately. I have to actually do the data analysis, so sometimes I have to be stuck in the office. But Dolphin Watch volunteers are first eyes on the water. They record opportunistic sighting of dolphins, so you could do the same in a marina. They also report any distress injuries animals, and they report stranded animals, which is really critical to really get first-hand and help. So as I mentioned, we do have that fin book, which is a catalogue showing the dorsal fins of each resident dolphin that we have. This fin book is actually from 2022, so quite updated with the current resident dolphins we have in the estuary. The last slide, ongoing future research. So obviously there is a lot of climate change discussions going on as well. I did not touch anything on that because none of my research back then were talking about climate change, but it's definitely around. Even so, we are in urbanized area and there is a lot of other things happening like development, climate change is also there. So we really need to have a long-term data set to really see any trend that can that are happening because of climate change, but also through the coastal development. And also just generally an increased use of the water. The population is just growing around Perth. And the last one is, the main one, is the cumulative of all of it. One impact or one development might not actually impact, but if you have a cumulative of and multiple of them, that's where the risk is much more important. We can also assess the effectiveness of conservation and management actions, whether it's the education, the citizen science program, and implementation of new policy. So with that, I'm going to say a big thank you for listening. And so if you have any questions, please do ask me now or a bit later. I'm happy to stay a little bit later. You can also email me, and I would like to just also very quickly put a lines on the fact that we are very fortunate to host the International Marine Mammal Conference here in Perth in November. That's going to be the first time it comes in Australia, and we're aiming to have a lot of people from over the world to come to that. And you are also welcome. Thank you.
Big
Anyone
question.
have any question?
I've got one question. There's so few dolphins in the Swamp Canyon.
Yes.
60 only. And you say that's because of the carrying capacity.
Potentially.
How can we increase the carrying capacity?
That's the thing. So I said potentially because we haven't done any research. It's something that is really difficult to actually study. You will need to understand how much fish you have in the environment, how many of these other fish are actually eating the other fish, and what is actually available for the dolphins itself. And you need to understand how much fish, but also calorie the dolphin itself will eat. So it's a big study to do, which has really rarely been done in the world, really. But there is a lot of questions about carrying capacity and why a population is not increasing more.
But we're only having 16 dolphins here. So don't you find that weird? Because we've got such a beautiful environment, and there's so much marine life. Why are there only 16?
In the estuary?
Yeah.
Well, the estuary itself is not that big. It's not that big in comparison to others. If you compare with, I guess, if you compare with Carbon Sounds, it sounds like a little bit, well, actually, if I put the map, it's not that big with this. However, with the Carbon Sounds, you have access to the adjacent water straight away. With the estuary, the only access you have from adjacent water is through a very narrow channel, which is the inner harbour. So this may also be a barrier for the dolphins. However, we do know that the dolphins using the estuary do venture in coastal water. What we have actually observed is that while the dolphins in the estuary venture in adjacent water, except for the females from Carbon Sands, none of the other ones actually venture in the estuary. It doesn't go the other way around. Yeah. So from after 2009, when we lost 6 dolphins, I started the study only in 2011, so there have been a few years, but there were some individuals that I could not actually identify from opportunistic survey that they did in 2009 and did look already adult. So my expectation, my hypothesis back then were that some individuals, a couple in those numbers really, very little, from adjacent water, so Owen and Page particularly, would have actually come to the estuary and make that home. It's very similar to what Hope has been doing since 2020.
Thank you. Fantastic presentation.
Yes.
Is there a seasonal variability in the population in the Swamp Canyon?
From the dolphins?
Yeah.
No. No, there is no variation, seasonal variations of the numbers. What you will see, however, is generally births of dolphins, so new calves, will happen in warmer months. So we often expect to have newborns between December and I'm going to say April. And that depends on how many females are still available for reproductions, and that depends on how old their current calf is. At the moment, we have definitely one female who potentially could have a calf, given that her latest calf is now a little more than 3 years old, so past the juvenile time. But yeah, so there could be years where we don't have any new calf, but simply because all the females have a calf to nurse, and they can't actually have 2 calves if the other one is not juveniles yet.
So, can I carry on? Good. Presumably in the winter, the freshwater, saltwater,
Yep.
where the two meet.
Yeah, you will see the environment conditions of the estuary changing a lot in the seasons. Yes.
Presumably that's further downstream, and then in the summer, the salt water's going further upstream. Are they following? Are they fussy about crossing that line?
So it's still within the estuary, but yes, you do have seasonal variations of the water. I'm going to say the water quality, which is the salinity, and with the fresh water coming in winter and much more salty. But within the estuary, they will still be using it. What may happen is that there will be seasons where the dolphins will be using some specific area of the estuary more often than other, depending on the season. And that is really related on based on the distributions of the prey. Now, dolphins are also opportunistic in terms of what they eat. So if you have a specific prey that is more abundant during winter, for example, the purse herring is more abundant in winter time, you'll see them eating a lot of purse herring in there.
Do you have any information on the health of the dolphins, and when they die, they get tested, and does the health of the dolphins vary depending on the areas that they live in?
Sorry, I'm not sure I heard your question. It's not because so has the
Dolphins been tested?
tested for? Oh yes, sorry. So part of the sorry, I just have hearing issues, so I need to have someone to. So yes, so part of the research we started with the government actually helping after the morbidity virus situation. It was actually a bit bigger than that. Here have only showed what have actually been studied, but the team was bigger, and part of the larger project, we had actually a health assessment of the dolphins. So we had a person, an actual pathologist, doing necropsies every time we had dead dolphins.
You mean autopsy, Wayne? You meant an autopsy?
Sorry?
You meant an autopsy?
So autopsy,
Yeah.
necropsy
Yeah.
is the same thing.
Yeah.
It's
So
the term.
what's the health of the dolphins?
What's the health?
Yeah.
In different areas.
That's a,
Old age or disease or...
Are
so
they in good shape?
Yeah.
well,
You know.
at the moment they are. It really depends on the individuals you're talking about. But in general, at the moment they are. Like it's not that we're seeing that all individuals are skinnier than usual or anything like that. It will very much be an individual case if there is an individual that have a problem issue, health issue. We haven't actually seen anything at the population itself, if that's what you're trying to get from that. But we have had someone actually doing necropsies on as many of the individuals we found to really better understand what would be the issues along the line of the death of an individual. And sometimes it's really difficult to actually get.
Another question here?
How do you tell the difference between a male and a female dolphin?
So if we're lucky,
On the surface.
if we're lucky and they want to play with your boat when you're moving along and they will be riding, very often they will actually come on belly up and you will be able to see the genital. Females, there is one long thing and 2 small ones on the side. The 2 small ones are the mammalian. So that's the females. The males will be one long one and the shorter ones below.
So you can't tell from the
No, not this particular species. We do have a species further north, which is the Australian humpback dolphins, and a study had actually been done on the markings, so they have white pigmentations on the dorsal fins, and what the study basically showed that the more white pigmentations you have on the dorsal fins, the most likely it is an elk. But we don't have that on Dolphins of Perth. It would be so much easier, to be honest. But we can also hypothesis dissect through the behaviors as well.
Jim?
Thanks for your talk, and thanks for it makes it more interesting to be able to see the dolphins in the marina, which you spot all the time. My question from your actual talk was about the Scarborough dolphins and whether there seems to be
Speak up, Jim.
much stronger relationship between Scarborough and the river, the estuary.
Which one, sorry?
Scarborough
Between
and
the
the
Scarborough
estuary.
dolphins
Yes, okay.
and the estuary.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a stronger relationship? No?
No, in fact, if you do actually see dolphins, well, I haven't actually been around Scarborough since 2015 now, so things may have changed a little bit. But if I look at the data that I collected in 2011, 2015, so in 4 years' time, if we have any dolphins from the estuary moving in adjacent water, it will be either going Oran Anchorage or Common Sounds. We've never actually seen them going the other way. If they were going, it would be just really on the other side of the wall, but not further north. So if you do see dolphins in Scarborough, most likely it's different dolphins than the one in the estuary. There will most likely be actually dolphins connected to a community that will be around Hilaris or the reef in that area.
And last question, Barry?
I will stay around for more questions.
Just curious on the river activities of the dolphins. We live at Mill Point Road, and Queen Street, we've got the jetty at the bottom. We lived there for quite a while. We used to see a lot of dolphins come up feeding outside the jetty. And now they've brought in a seaplane that comes in a couple of times a day. Very noisy. We virtually haven't seen any dolphins here since it's been operated. Would they affect them very much or not?
Well, I guess the sound, underwater sound, it's not my expertise, but underwater sounds can actually create displacement on dolphins. But also, if it's not on the dolphins directly, it will be displacement on the fish. So if there is no fish around
the different
anymore.
sounds of the boats and everything is quite high.
Yeah.
It just we don't get dolphins here much at all.
Yeah, so we
And
did.
even the swans and the feeding birds aren't here so much now. Maybe it is a fishing population.
Well, there have been actually quite a few sightings of the same individuals too. There is also some individuals that are, I generally don't use that term, but I'm going to use it here, territorial. So we have some, so out of the 26 dolphins, including the calf, and this is a number we have today, we have a few of them that will generally be seen in the lower reach, but you will never see them closer to close. And then you have some that will venture everywhere. And we have a couple of females which generally are actually more either Swan River or Canning River itself. Lately, at least since they've actually created that island in this area, we've seen a couple of females with their calf foraging there in the area. But yeah, there could be a displacement through much more noise or simply not the best habitat anymore for the fish itself.
Reproduction, at times from like the growth of each of the schools, each of the pods, seems to be a long time. You say that they've got their juveniles.
Yep.
3
So
years.
So the gestations is 12 months. So that's already quite a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah, so gestation is 12 months, and then the calf will stay with the mum for an average between 2 and 3 years. So when the calves, there are a lot of cases where the calf become juveniles as soon as the mom got a new calf. So the mom who become pregnant before the other calves is actually juvenile,
Right.
but it will be within that time frames where it has to become, it will become juvenile.
It just seems to be a long time
It
in order
is a
to
long
increase
time.
the population.
Well, that's why when we have one calf dying,
Yes.
it might mean nothing in a population of 100, but when you have a population of 26 dolphins, one calf, it's actually quite important given this time frame that you have for reproductions and build up that new generation.
Right. And you were saying that you expect that the 26 dolphins in the estuary, it's all dependent on the food supply. So how good or not good or otherwise is the quality of the Canning River water quality?
Well, this is a question for someone from the department who actually do water quality, but from the more recent talk that I had with that person, the water quality is actually much better. They've done a lot of work in making sure that the water is being oxygenated when it needs to be. It's really more about, so the 26 resident dolphins will stay in the estuary. They will just be moving between the harbours to Canning. Canning River is actually a hotspot. We do actually see them a lot there, but we do have sometimes people telling us we didn't see them for 2 months. And that is really about where the fish are. And there is that seasonal variations of where the fish goes in the estuary, so that will create movement of the dolphins in bigger, much different area than other seasons. But you have other parameters around as well, development that makes, for example, dolphins not going in an area. I would say, for example, close to Arizona Island at the moment, where they're creating the pedestrian bridge. It's highly likely that dolphins actually don't go in this area. We had a study done in the inner harbors where they did pilot, not the originator, something that created a lot of noise. And what this study is actually showing that while they were actually doing pile driving, while they were doing pile driving, they didn't actually see the dolphins around, but as soon as the pile driving activities stopped, the dolphins come back.
Right.
So this is something that could happen, and if that's the case, and it's a short time period, it's okay. But if you have accumulations of this and it's coming closer and closer, then that might actually have a bigger impact on how the dolphins are using the area, and if the rest, whatever is available, is still viable for a much longer time.
So I know everyone wants to go home, but I've got one question.
I'm happy to keep.
Yeah, I know, but I know.
No, I'm very good, very happy.
You said you avoid using the word territorialism or whatever.
Yes.
So the question is it actually resources that limit how many dolphins are in that area, or is it inbuilt into dolphins to be territorial and limit how many other individuals are in the area?
It's a good question. I probably won't have a full answer to that, simply because it comes back to that carrying capacity aspect of it. But there is a lot to do with the social behavior of the individuals and how they connect between individuals. So, I mean, they have a magnificent brain. We do socialize, we do form a smaller group. They certainly have exactly the same way of thinking and choosing with who they will actually be. So by creating this variation in associations, they do create that sort of territorial area.
There's supposed to be an increase in bull sharks in the Swan River. Has there been any thoughts about the impact of the increase in bull sharks maybe on dolphins?
Well, we have seen dolphins with shark bite in the estuary, most likely from bull shark. Not that we can actually mitigate the bull shark for the dolphin itself. It's part of the natural ecosystem, if I can put it this way. But we haven't actually seen any sharp bites on dolphins in the last couple of years, I'm going to say. At least in summer times where the food sharks are generally the most active in the swan training estuary.
I think bull sharks are protected, are they?
It will be used as protected species, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everybody. Delphine, that was so interesting. Thank you so much. Lots and lots of information for us to digest and enjoy. Please come up for a chat to Delphine afterwards. And we have a fin book here if you'd like to souvenir one for your boats at all. So that'll identify the different dolphins and their fin marks and love bites, if you like, that they have. So you can identify those different dolphins there. So thank you so much. Please, a very small token of our appreciation. Thank you very much. Just some quick notices from the cruising section before we go. Please check your emails and Facebook pages for updates on our events. There's a jam sale. Please register for that this Sunday that Ollie is organising. The last twilight will be next week, 24th of April. There's a spit roast dinner and dessert for $10. You really need to be there because we're going for a record number of boats. Record number is 24 at the moment, so if we can go for as many boats as we can, that would be wonderful. And then the next day, if you can't get enough of sailing, there is Anzac Day events. I think there's a jam sale and a race on that day. And the next topic night is Nick Turner, who has sailed to Antarctica, and he will have a very entertaining evening on May the 16th about his sailing adventures there. So thank you so much, everybody, and see you next time. Thank you.